I'm going to have to revisit this clown Tristan again. Why? Because he's talking about feminists going after Shakespeare. Why do feminists go after Shakespeare? Because he's a perfect example of male creativity. He showcases the greatness of maleness. And of course, his hate group does not want to see that. They want to make sure that people don't see Shakespeare. Let's see what this guy has to say.
What's worse than book burning? It's forgetting what literature is even for in the first place.
Shut up, you loser. No one's forgetting about what literature is about. These women want to make sure that the greatness of men is never seen. They want to deny any positive qualities to our gender. Now, you're either ignorant of this or you're lying. Which one are you?
Now, there's a growing concern that universities, institutions of learning, all the education systems have actually begun to forget even what literature is.
Really, there's a growing concern. Something that's been going on probably since the 90s, 30 years or so. And you're concerned now? And of course, they want us to forget not just literature, they want us to forget male achievers. They're not against Jane Austen, for example. They'll boost her up to the end of time. So this is a gendered issue. This is a men's issue. Tristan.
And that is having a knock-on effect into society and what it produces. Just take a look at some of these quotes. It is unacceptable that a Yale student considering studying English literature might read only white male authors.
Well, there you go. Male authors. Authors. It's not about whiteness. It's male authors. That's what they're against. They don't want them to read them at all. It's not a question of only. They don't want them to be read at all.
No matter Shakespeare's prominence in the English language, I find this requirement specifically dedicated to his works to be an antiquated idea. Shakespeare.
So, are they going to talk about Jane Austen like that? No. Her ideas will never be antiquated, right? They'll always be something up to par, something you can show a modern audience. So this is an excuse to bury Shakespeare.
Shakespeare's works contain many problematic undertones. To require all English majors to read Shakespeare, it is to hold on to the racism in Othello.
There wasn't any racism in Othello. Othello was the hero. He's the main guy. And what happened to him was a tragedy. Anyone who ever reads Othello will feel for Othello. So it's actually anti-racist.
The anti-Semitism in The Merchant of Venice, the toxic.
And there isn't any anti-Semitism in Merchant of Venice. Or I should say there's no propaganda. Because you feel for, I'm trying to remember the Shylock. You feel for Shylock, right? You don't come away from that play thinking, I'm glad Shylock got what he deserved. No, there was this fantastic speech from Shylock that gave defense of Jews. To say, we're human beings. You know, if you cut us, do we not bleed, right? So anyone coming away from that play will say to themselves, Shylock was screwed over. This is a travesty. So it's not anti-Semitism.
Masculinity in Romeo and Juliet and the misogyny in the Taming of the Shrew.
As for Juliet, Romeo and Juliet, a young girl loved a young guy. That's their issue. They want to see that. And as for the Taming of the Shrew, That's the worst because in the Taming of the Shrew, the woman who was the Shrew, Catherine, she got everything she wanted. There's no misogyny. She got to have a high status man provide her with a luxurious lifestyle. And in the end, she didn't really have to obey him, right? I just want you to look at this. Here's, they're talking about Taming of the Shrew, right? This is the last act where the guys get together. There's three couples, and they actually have a bet on whose woman is the most obedient, right? Petruchio, I believe he's the one who's with Kate. They say you're still stuck with a vicious shrew, and they give him some grief for it. But he confidently suggests a test to see if which one of the three new husbands has the most obedient wife, right? Right. Each one will send for his wife, and those whose wife obeys first will be the winner. After putting money down, then this is important. After placing a significant amount of money on the wager, that's important to this, by the way, right? So these guys send for their wives, right? And one of them says, tell them that she's busy and will not come. So you've got to play where the husband isn't in charge at all. The wife just says, screw you, I'm busy. And the other guy's wife does the exact same thing, right? Finally, Grumio goes back to get Kate, and she returns at once to the great surprise of all but Petruchio. Remember, money's put on this guy. And Petruchio sends Kate back to bring the other wives. Again, she obeys upon their return. Notice their wives don't listen to their husbands, but they listen to another woman. So this is not this is not showing that the women are browbeaten by their men. The women are in charge. The men are the servants, right? Of course, in the speech, Kate reprimands them for their angry dispositions, right? And Kate's speech at the end of the play has been the focus of many interpretations for obvious reasons abhorrent to many feminist assholes, right? Now, this is the important part, right? Again, they put money on it. Let's see. They talk about, let's see. Yeah, given the fact that the entire play challenges stereotypes, it does, right? Just like Shylock was was the voice for Jewish people, right? Throughout the play, Kate actively accepted Petruchio's courting and taming, even when she could have denied him. Right? She chose him because she wanted a man to work for her, suggesting that here she also had agency to say one thing and mean another. Another, she was lying about obeying her husband. Despite her initial resistance, Kate seems to view her marriage as a chance to find harmony within a prescribed social role, ultimately playing that she should find happiness and independence within the roles which were assigned. Not that women should subject themselves to men. And it suggested that she was in on it, that she and Petruchio set the other two up to make money. That's what it was about. So it's important. Taming of the Shrew above all the most important, right? Because Shakespeare, he predated first wave feminism and shows guys were always there to give women whatever they wanted, always.
Our kids should interrogate the merit of Shakespeare's plays and the amount of attention his work gets. So those are just a handful of comments which are typical of many of the criticisms levelled at the traditional way of teaching English literature and looking to the classic.
They're not criticisms, pal. They're just bashing. They're bashing it. Any feminist woman who read The Taming of the Shrew approves of it. There's all kinds of feminist women who get married and have a male servant. It's just that she didn't like the fact that there was even a mention that a woman might have to obey her husband, right? But more to the point is that Shakespeare shows, he displays the greatness of male creativity. That's what they're actually against. Okay?
Texts. You may hear them and think something is deeply wrong. Now, what I want to say is the request for more diversity is not what is wrong. In fact, that's a noble goal. What's
No, it isn't, you lying sack. Since men are the ones who achieved, there doesn't need to be diversity. If you want diversity, women have to get off their asses and get over their inability to create and do so.
really wrong is these comments betray a significant, almost catastrophic lack of understanding of what literature is for.
Again, you're either ignorant or you're lying. Which one is it? These people are not ignorant. These women are not ignorant. They despise us and they're out to get us. And they're aiming right for the top. They don't want male greatness on display.
And therefore it's going to have a bad knock-on effect. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a head-on rebuttal to these comments, but instead of me making a rebuttal, we're going to look at the classics, or specifically Shakespeare, to give a riposte to these comments, which will demonstrate how academia may very well have forgotten what literature is actually about.
Really? So Shakespeare's going to have a quote saying these feminist assholes should bug off? I doubt he does. This guy Tristan, he's such a beggar.
So let me ask you, what makes great literature great? Well, first, it bestows wisdom on the reader who comes to it humbly. It reveals great beauty.
Okay, that's right. Shakespeare does that. But feminists aren't humble people. They're nasty hate mongers. So it's wasted on them, isn't it?
It is the best thoughts put in the best words. It's what Leonardo da Vinci called sapere vedere, or knowing how to see.
He's mentioning another great man, right? You knock the voices of male greatness off the walls, we'll just become savages. Remember, guys, women don't civilize men. Men civilize women.
Beyond what most people do. Or, to use Shakespeare, he said, to hold, as 'twere, the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image.
And that was from Hamlet, of course. But that's why I brought this up. Taming is a shrew, right? He's showing a mirror. What does the mirror say? That the guys vie for a woman who's obedient. The men are servants to their wives. They supply them with a luxury lifestyle, and the women show them complete contempt. And even the so-called shrew, she was free in the end as well. She gave up a bullshit, a bullshit speech at the end that she didn't even believe herself. And her husband knew it was bullshit as well, because money was on the line. So Shakespeare actually showed a true mirror to how people behaved.
Great literature works as this beautiful mirror which enables us to see ourselves deep inside and the world around us much more clearly, and it ennobles and enlightens. This brings us to the second error that seems to be being made by many modern critics now.
No, they're not modern critics. They're not critics, right? And they're not errors. These are feminist scumbags, and they're doing this on purpose.
And that is that they often talk of literature via the group identity, whereas literature is supremely individual.
I disagree. I disagree because it's obvious that the male identity is one of creation. And that's why they are so against these plays and stories. Yes, individual men, aspire or even achieve greatness, but it's usually a male endeavor and male success. And that's their issue.
Great literature starts with a unique mind who has seen something or felt something and understood it in a certain way that they want to convey it across to all other humans who individually have the ability to sense those emotions, irrespective of their demographic. This is why the great writer Ralph Ellison, when he was challenged to just write about the black experience,
But at the same time, the female demographic, what's the response? It's usually men who appreciate these men's achievements, their creations. And a lot of women despise them. That's why Shakespeare is under attack.
replied by saying this: I point out that while one can do nothing about choosing one's relatives, one can, as artist, choose one's ancestors. Wright was, in a sense, a relative, Hemingway an ancestor, Eliot, Malraux and Dostoevsky and Faulkner were ancestors. Ellison understood that there is far more, infinitely more, that we share on the inside than any external differences we may have. Literature is from an individual and to an individual. You know, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, both Russian, both living at the same time, both coming from similar states of class in society, neither of them could write what the other wrote. It's a supremely individual thing, and we do great harm to literature by only looking at it in categories of different people as if the individual doesn't.
Well, there you go. So these women are seeing Shakespeare in a category of men. And since they're out to get men, they're out to destroy all these achievements. That's the point of it, by the way, Tristan.
Exist. So, with these things in mind, we're now going to go back 400 years and we're going to just let a few lines of Shakespeare answer the critics from the comments we heard earlier.
They're not critics again. They're vandals.
First up, let's consider that challenge where it said it's unacceptable that a university student considering a major in English literature should only read white male authors, and that's for one semester.
Well, if they read the greats, and if the greats are all white men, then so be it. But again, their issue is that they're with men, that they're men that are doing it. If all the men were of different races, they would still have a problem with it.
Now, of course, read from a diverse range. That's never the problem. But let's see what the fault is in that kind of thinking. It's falling into clustering people into groups and not seeing the individual. In Romeo and Juliet,
they see us as individuals. They hate all men, so they hate you as an individual and they hate me as an individual.
Shakespeare has Juliet say, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." Juliet's not supposed to love Romeo because one's a Montague and one's a Capulet. But she says, why should a name make any difference? It's the character of the person. Call him another name and he'd still be as sweet, just as a rose would. Likewise with literature. Going at it based on identity misses the point of literature altogether.
You don't know what their point is, dude. You don't know what their point is. The point is to get us. And so it makes perfect sense. It has nothing to do with literature. It's about you and me.
It's supremely individual. Take the great classics, erase their names, delete all knowledge of who wrote it, when they wrote it. What would the text be? Wouldn't it still smell as sweet?
But that's important. If they could erase Shakespeare and put a female name, they'd be happy. Then they'd be bragging up Shakespeare all the live long day. Then Shakespeare is worthy to be read by every woman because a woman wrote it. So identity means everything.
What's in a name? What's in a gender? What's in an author when it comes to literature? So Shakespeare had already anticipated that 400 years ahead of time. Second, what of the call for students or our kids to interrogate the merit of Shakespeare's plays? It may seem reasonable to some on the face of it, but what's the first prerogative of great literature? It's to bestow wisdom. Now, typically, what is the quality that most young ones or students lack in a given field? Wisdom. So asking for students to interrogate the worth of Shakespeare and whether it should be a part of the curriculum.
This isn't big students going after the masters. These are women going after male creators. So again, you have the framing wrong, and it's done on purpose. You're doing this on purpose. I don't think you're ignorant. I just think you're a bad person, Tristan.
Or how much of the curriculum it should be, is asking the apprentice to judge the master. It's asking for the essay before learning to write.
But these women aren't apprentices. These feminist women who, when they enter university, they're not students. There are women who are just there to take up space and have things and dominate that space. How many of these women who go to university, when it's all over, marry a man and let him do all the work, and they don't bother with their career at all? Or if they bother with a career, they retire early from it, right? They're just there to dominate. So your framing is all wrong again.
In fact, it's the total wrong order of things, or the wrong...
An apprentice wouldn't destroy his master's work. He'd learn from it.
Degree of things, as Shakespeare calls it. Take but degree away, and tune that string, and hark what discord follows. Strength should be lord of imbecility, and the rude son should strike his father dead. He's talking about the wrong degree or the wrong order of things, a lack of respect for those who come before, those who are wiser. And he says, if you twist that around, what discord follows? What a mess follows. Strength would be lord of imbecility. That means the strong should lord it over the weak. In other words, be dictatorial, crush the weak. The rude son should strike the father dead instead of having respect for the father.
Yeah, but why are you saying that? You see, you're full of shit, dude. Shakespeare isn't talking about any of what's going on here now. You know, young men aren't going here to university to spit on these male creators. It's the young girls who are doing it.
Well, wouldn't that be the same as the student should strike down the teacher's curriculum? It's the wrong degree, and it always leads to discord and confusion. What of the charge of teaching the classics or Shakespeare being antiquated and they're having problematic undertones?
Well, then you couldn't teach history, could you? You couldn't teach history. To teach history, you'd have to look at people who wrote things during their time. That could be 100 years ago, that could be 1,000 years ago.
This is a really bizarre challenge and is mere rhetoric. Of course it's antiquated to want someone to learn from the best. Since time immemorial, in every trade and discipline, if you want to learn, you go to the best that you possibly can. So for someone to say,
thank you for admitting that men are the best, right? That's what these women despise. They despise us, but the irony is that we achieve them on a macro level. Individually, we may not, but on macro level, men achieve and women don't. That's the irony of it. That's what really crawls up their asses.
I find it an old-fashioned idea that someone wishing to learn English literature should go back and study the greatest writer of English literature is a very bizarre, nonsensical point of view.
It makes complete sense. This is a hate mob. Once you realize it's hate, it makes perfect sense. And by the way, even if men were imbecilic dummies, we'd still deserve to be treated with respect. You know, the dumbest, weakest, lamest woman is treated with respect by men. So whether men achieve something or not, that's actually in that regard, neither here nor there. But remember, this is about male achievement on display, and these hate mongers despise that. That's why they're continually working to destroy it, erase it, or at the very least get people disinterested in ever reading it.
But what of it's problematic? The problematic undertones. This reveals a gross naivety. It shows that the critics are confusing the illuminating force with what is being illuminated.
No, they're not confused, you lying sack.
They see maggots and blame the sun. Hamlet darkly observed this: "For if the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a god-kissing carrion, the sun is a noble force. A dead dog is corrupt matter. When the sun shines on corrupt matter, it breeds maggots. But the sun isn't the cause of maggots." Likewise,
Yeah, like Taming as a Shrew. Catherine was a maggot. She got married to a man to use him and pretended that she was on his side to make money off her friends. Right.
Shakespeare isn't the cause of underlying or problematic undertones. Rather, he is the illuminating genius that shines his light on corruption that is around us and will always be around us, and shows us the very source of where these problematic undertones come from so that we can deal with them. Shakespeare knew life wasn't sanitized. In fact, as he would put it, "The web of our life is of a mingled yarn, good and ill together." What about the claim that to get our students to continue reading Shakespeare is to hold on to the racism and anti-Semitism of Othello and the Merchant of Venice? That is the ultimate failure in reading.
Yeah, but it's not failure, dipstick. They're telling this lie to destroy it.
It's to confound depiction with endorsement. Because you talk about a topic, you must agree with the topic. That is nonsense. And it's hard to believe that some people are saying that as a critique against Shakespeare and the classic.
Again, this is not a critique. They're just lying. They're just lying, dude, to smear Shakespeare and other great men. That's it.
Let's just take Othello. Othello is a Moor. He is black. He is in the state of Venice. And there is the vile and conniving racist Iago who wants to bring Othello down from his position of influence. Does that mean Shakespeare is backing racism? No way.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, Iago, a lot of people would complain that there was no proper description of why Iago hated Othello. And there doesn't need to be. There are real life psychopaths out there and sadists and narcissists who really get by on seeing others fall. So Shakespeare didn't need to give some reason for Iago to attack Othello, right?
Othello is one of the most noble, upright, brilliant, dignified characters in all of Shakespeare's plays. This play takes place in Venice. That is so significant. At this point in history, the Italian states, particularly Venice and Florence, were considered the height of enlightenment, the height of fashion, the height of nobility, the height of intelligence. The play is set in Venice, and of all the intelligent, dignified, righteous, fashionable people, who is top in its society in the play Othello? Othello, the Black Moor. Does that sound like a racist to you?
It isn't, but they're going to lie and say it is anyway. So again, this isn't confusion. That's what I got to keep hammering home.
And at the end of the play, we feel so broken at the demise of Othello. But who do we despise? We despise Iago, the white man who brought him down because of race or just because of jealousy. That Shakespeare took someone, and he does this frequently, who in his day would have been classed as the outsider, and made him the greatest of characters in a play.
Of course, a male great. He's the one who holds a mirror up to society, but he's the true progressive. He's the true progressive. The feminists that want to take him down are regressive. They are the knuckle draggers. They are the vandals. They are the orcs. That's why they oppose Shakespeare.
Is highlighting the wickedness, the foolishness, the stupidity of people who only see through the eyes of race, like Iago. So actually, to hold on to Othello is not to hold on to racism, it's to hold on to a critique against racism, to call it out for all its stupidity and vileness. But what of The Merchant of Venice? Doesn't that portray anti-Semitism in a big way? It certainly does. In fact, the characters are very anti-Semitic inside The Merchant of Venice.
Yeah, exactly. But he's going to point out the story is propaganda against anti-Semitism, not for it, right?
But does depiction mean endorsement? It's a woeful reading of the play. For centuries, so many have said that Shakespeare is sympathetic to Shylock. While he makes this play, he actually makes the Christians look ugly inside it. The poet and writer Heinrich Heine, a German Jew, said that Shakespeare made him a man, a great tragic figure, someone to respect. If Shakespeare was trying to promote anti-Semitism, why did he give Shylock the most immortal words?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Continue.
When he says, "Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions? fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer as a Christian is? If you
This is a very long way of saying I'm a person too, and I deserve rights too. Men are essentially Shylock.
prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? If Shakespeare was anti-Semitic and agreed with the persecution,
Oh, by the way, here's another thing. I bet Shakespeare had to have Shylock get it in the end. Because the anti-Semites of the day might not allowed his play to go through if he didn't. That's the other thing.
of Jews, would he ever have given Shylock the best words in the whole play? Would he have ever tried to make us sympathetic to him, to the point that people in audiences with tears in their eyes stood up and shouted out, "The man is wronged," and could see that it was the Christians at fault and not Shylock the Jew? To read this and say to teach it is to hold on to anti-Semitism is to not read at all. It is to miss the point of literature.
Well, they're not missing the point of literature. They're trashing men. Dude, right? There's no point for them to miss.
It is to miss the knowing how to see. Shakespeare shone the sun on the dead dog where maggots like anti-Semitism and racism were breeding and highlighted them for what they were. That is something to be studied. I just want us to pause and appreciate what's just happened. We had some criticisms of the classics and Shakespeare read at the beginning.
No, they weren't criticisms, they were attacks.
We have just looked at Shakespeare's writing from 400 years ago, where he's already observed these kinds of ideas before. He's already got a riposte to critics who come 400 years later in beautiful, poetic language and so simply expressed. Now, is that not great literature and worthy of study?
No, not according to the feminists, because a man did it. And it makes a man look great. Right? The KKK wouldn't let great literature written by black men on the shelves.
On the flip side, how impoverished must the critiques be that they've already been spotted and talked about 400 years before? They've come up with nothing new at all.
Well, there's nothing new about hatred, right?
And what we've really learned is that the Academy has become very, very confused. And
No, the Academy hasn't become confused. It's been infiltrated by women who hate you for being your gender. And the men in charge allowed it, and now they're letting them destroy the place. So suck it up, male feminist.
perhaps with virtuous intent has got itself into trouble. Because wanting to diversify, for instance, and many other things that are said, of course is the right thing to do. But they've forgotten what literature is in the process. And if you look at my last video, which is about using the tools of sociology to study literature and why that makes a mistake.
Okay, enough of this. I don't need to go over the last 4 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever's left. I don't believe that you are ignorant. I believe you are simply lying. I believe you're begging women to understand. You're like a black man coming up to the KKK members and saying, look, we're not so bad. Don't lynch us. I'm one of the good ones. No, screw you. Screw you and your disingenuous take on this whole issue. Men need to protect Shakespeare and other male writers from the vandalism of people who are jealous of us and hate us for no good reason. Men are Othello, women are Iago. It's that simple. I put it all in a nutshell.